Oh hey, how's it going? The Monster Hunter Wilds wishlist continues, my friends. Last time I spoke about what sort of graphics and art style I would like to see, but today I'm going to open up a topic that will likely take me a few videos to cover. There is a lot to talk about when we mention gameplay, combat, grinding, endgame systems, farms, variety, etc. So I thought I would begin tackling this subject by approaching it in the broader sense, which is why today I'm going to be talking about the pace of the hunt. While Monster Hunter is classed as an RPG, it sits within the niche of the hunting genre, a classification which has been pretty much dominating for a while now. Let's be real, competitors have yet to reach the level that recent Monster Hunter titles have reached. I mean, the most promising challenger was Wild Hearts, and that turned into a shit show. I guess that you could say Dragon's Dogma 2 is a strong contender, meaning that right now, Capcom's greatest threat is itself. Hunting games have a few quirks that separate it from regular RPGs. Typically, you have a boss, you have an arena for said boss, and the boss has a health bar. Meanwhile, in the hunting niche, you have to track down the boss's health doesn't show, and they can appear in multiple parts of the map. There can even be multiple bosses in one place, as I'm sure you're aware thanks to this little fucker. In a sense, the big difference between a regular RPG and a hunting RPG lies within the focus on the environment. Although the fight itself is still the main focus, the way you go around the fight is also very important. And we see this evolving more and more in Monster Hunter. Tri introduced swimming, 4 introduced mounting, Iceborne allow you to wallbang monsters, Rise turn you into Spider-Man.
Give me some of that web action. See you, chump. What the hell?
These changes affect more than just the combat, and they split Monster Hunter into two main categories, the handheld games and the home console games. Portable titles have always been a bit more arcade-ish. The focus is on fast and flashy stuff that's meant to serve almost as a sandbox to test your limits, whereas home consoles try to provide a more immersive and methodical experience. And we don't really have to look far to compare these different approaches, do we? When we look at the 5th gen of World and Rise, we see a very clear difference in the pace of the hunt. World's combat is slower and more basic in terms of the movesets, but then this is enhanced by the environment surrounding the hunter. Things like rock traps, waterfalls, ledges, mushroom walls, and so on. All of this serves as some sort of combat expansion as long as you're paying attention. This does make the gameplay slower and more technical. You feel a lot more immersed because you're referring to not just your own attacks, but you're wary of your surroundings as they may benefit you or just screw you over if you're not careful. But in games like Rise and GU, the environment is not really as big of a factor. However, your moveset is highly customizable, making weapons play completely different depending on things like wirebug skills or hunting styles. It's more about saving the right skill for the right time. Personally, I love both styles. I think Gaijin Hunter has a pretty good analogy where it comes to comparing this stuff to, I think it's ice cream flavors. Something along the lines of like, oh, my favorite flavor is chocolate, but I might switch it up to mint if I'm feeling like it. And I think the way that this reflects upon Monster Hunter is, for example, I prefer a slower, more methodical hunting pace, more akin to World and Iceborne, so I can be more immersed. However, sometimes I just want to switch things up and go with a faster and more arcade-ish experience. Now, I would usually refer to the Monster Hunter Wilds trailer as I did in my last wishlist video to illustrate my point. But all we've seen in terms of pacing is the hunter on the mount and how it can be very flexible when traversing the map. I really love how they seem to have taken the palamutes and improved them. Don't get me wrong, drifting dogs are pretty cool, but whatever this thing is seems to have a few more tricks up its sleeve. Regardless, since the trailer doesn't show us much, I gotta speculate a little. Having recently played Dragon's Dogma 2, I am very aware of the fact that my preference leans more towards a more immersive experience. I love how in World I need to track the monster and use the environment to my advantage. I love doing things outside of hunting, such as exploring nooks and crannies of the map so that I can find a funny animal to put in my room. But this doesn't really mean that I think World's pacing is perfect. If there's one thing that I found lackluster in this particular game, it was combat variety. You have one, maybe two ways of playing a weapon if you're lucky, whereas hunting styles and wirebugs in Rise and GU made building sets and fighting monsters a lot more enjoyable. But the answer isn't as easy as World's environment and Rise's combat put together, because I genuinely don't believe that these two types of gameplay would really mix very well. I mean, that's why they're in different games in the first place, right? But I do believe that there is a middle ground we can find to take the best bits out of all Monster Hunter games and combine them as well as we can. For example, I would love for Blast Dash that was introduced in GU to stay with the gun lens since it currently has no mobility skills within its base moveset. But let's not give it 3 fucking dashes like we did in Rise, because that is a bit too much. I would also love to have some sort of system that would allow you to redirect or bait the monster in a specific direction, but not something like Iceborne's Clutch Claw that creates weak spots and guaranteed knockdowns, pretty much becoming mandatory, right? I hope you can see what I'm saying, and I hope that I'm also not coming off necessarily as a buzzkill. It's just because we don't really need to keep bringing back old stuff again and again when we can sort of adapt it to newer titles and create something new that can also make the game more fluent. A bit of a side rant, but I don't really know when or why we decided that we have to pick an objective best option. After all, different approaches will speak to different people, meaning that regardless of whether this game sells more copies than that game, technically speaking, there really isn't a best objective choice. I'm only really bringing this up because I know I compare World to Rise a lot, and I know that some people think that I'm defending Title X and slandering Title Y, when in reality, that couldn't be further from the truth. I only do so because these games have very different approaches and they illustrate my points well. Also, it's safe to say that most Monster Hunter fans are far more likely to have played these two games over older titles like, I don't know, For You and Freedom Unite. But you know, every single fandom will have its batch of bad apples, meaning that sometimes you're just gonna run into people that can't be reasoned with. And it's kinda really sad to see people commenting stuff like, this game's better than that game, and if you like that game, then you're just stupid. Don't get me wrong, it's perfectly fine to have your preference and make it known to people, but being obnoxious about it and bringing down other people as well as other Monster Hunter titles is like shooting yourself in the foot. And I'm a living and breathing example of this because I refused to play Stories 2 for the longest time because I thought it wouldn't be as good as your typical Monster Hunter game, only to fall in love with it and feel like a moron for putting it down and delaying it for so long with no good reason. This is a bit of a useless PSA because the true fans of Monster Hunter will never really bring others down. We will disagree and poke fun at each other, but it never really gets violent. And bro, I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. I am saying only true Monster Hunter fans because I am trying to gatekeep here, okay? I don't really care if you prefer World or For You or Rise or GU or Stories. I don't care as long as you're not obnoxious and putting other people down just because they don't agree with you. Then you're fine. It's totally cool to disagree and poke fun at each other, but you don't have to say that someone who prefers Rise is a newbie with zero knowledge, or if you prefer World, you're some sort of elitist that can't think past graphics, or if you prefer older gens, then you're some sort of copium nostalgic boomer that can't accept modern games, right? The way I see it is that it's all Monster Hunter, it's all fun, and I think that for your own sake, you ought to try as many Monster Hunter titles as you can before Wilds comes out, because you might feel like all Wilds needs is to copy your favorite title, but trying other Monster Hunter games may well give you a lot of insight into things that you want, but you perhaps just don't know about. In conclusion, my desired hunting pace for Wilds would be the overall speed and environmental involvement of World with some of Rise's and GU's combat features. And even something like underwater combat to add a new layer to gameplay would be pretty damn amazing. Like I said earlier in today's video, gameplay is a broad topic, so it will take me more than a few videos to tackle some of the things I've mentioned today with greater attention to detail. But what do you think? Do you agree or disagree with what I've said today? Let me know in the comments because I am very curious to know what you want to see in Monster Hunter Wilds. This will be all for me today. Thank you for watching, and until we meet again.